Hello everyone, and welcome back for week 2 of Smaugust. For those of you who are just joining us now, I'd recommend that you go back and check out week 1's video, as I explain the idea behind the Smaugust challenge in greater detail there. But put simply, this is the second week of a month-long challenge where I draw one dragon a day from the How to Train Your Dragon series for 31 days. Before we begin, a small note of housekeeping. I've altered the list slightly, mostly in the week 4 area, to fix some of the issues that I had with this list. Thank you Wyatt Bond 4646 who pointed out the first mistake that I made, that being that I had the Thorn Ridge dragon on there twice, so I replaced one of them with the Hobgoblin dragon. Then I also made a few dragon changes towards the end of the month to dragons that I thought would be more exciting for me to draw at least, but we don't have to deal with that until week 4. This is the updated list, which I have posted both on Discord and on my community tab. But with that out of the way, I have nothing more to say as we move on to the 7 week 2 designs of Smaugust. The Changewing is another prime example of a super creative design that comes out of the How to Train Your Dragon series. Not only does it spray acid as opposed to fire, it, like a chameleon, also has the ability to change the color of its scales. Unlike a chameleon, however, whose scale changes are usually based on mood or to give itself camouflage, the Changewing can change its color so well that it appears invisible. This is a super cool idea, and honestly, it's a shame that this dragon didn't get more attention in any of the movies. Taking animal inspiration for my version of the design, I of course took some inspiration from chameleons and my posing of the tail and my slight alteration of the eyes. The Changewings are a little, well, let's just say they're not biologically feasible, at least when it comes to their wings and how they're drawn in the Dragon Manual. At least not as flight wings, but I did notice that their wings do resemble a real-life structure on an existing animal, that being the underarm flaps of many flying lizards, who use these flaps to glide short distances instead of fly full outright. So instead of altering the wings to be more feasible like I'd otherwise probably do, I kept the overall shape and positioned them to be more like these gliding flaps of flying lizards, as I thought that that might be a cool touch to my version of this dragon. As a final touch, I made the wing tips and tail transparent to illustrate its camouflageable nature, which actually made the background a little bit hard to do with the gradient that I had going on, but it looked just fine in the end. Day 7 brought about a series staple to the challenge, the Gronckle. This dragon is interesting as they gave it a unique explanation behind its fire-breathing abilities. Technically, it doesn't breathe fire, rather it eats ignitable rocks, which it cooks into a molten mass in its stomach and regurgitates as a half-molten ball of lava. Maybe not the most realistic idea, but a super cool one nonetheless. Another less realistic trait that the Gronckle has in the films is the way its wings are shaped. Yes, I know it's a cartoon and it's supposed to resemble the way a honeybee flies with a big body and little wings, but those tiny wings are not in any world providing enough lift to fly this heavy dragon. As such, I expanded on the wings, still keeping them relatively small compared to its size, enough that it still probably wouldn't be able to achieve lift in the real world, but I think my version at least does a good job of making it look a little more grounded in reality. No pun intended. My main animal inspiration for the texture of the Gronckle's scales was the Texas horned toad, as it too has spiny, rough scales that make it look like a rock. And I think that that's the closest thing that we have in real life to a Gronckle. I was actually really happy with how this one turned out, as I felt like I used these scale patterns very well in this one. But I hope you all also like my more realistic take on the Gronckle. Now, yeah, the last 2 dragons were cool, but Day 8 Zippleback may be in my top 3 favorite designs, behind the Skaldron, of course. The Hydra-like inspiration behind its 2 heads is really cool, but the interesting idea behind the dragon is actually in the biologically feasible way that it breathes fire. It may be presented in a more fantastical way in the films, but the Zippleback breathes out fire using both of its heads independently. One breathes a flammable gas, and the other sparks it and sets it ablaze. Although the idea of a creature making sparks in its mouth may be a little bit unrealistic, the fire-breathing method resembles a method that appears in nature, the bombardier beetle, a sort of famous beetle at this point who uses 2 chemicals found in its abdomen to create small explosions that it uses to drive off its enemies. These explosions come from the mixing of the volatile chemicals that it keeps separate before it shoots them out. Which, yeah, it's a little different from the Zippleback, but I think it's the same basic idea. My version of the Zippleback was, it was fine. I wasn't super happy with how this one turned out when compared to the others. However, looking back, I think I did my job pretty well. It looks like a semi-realistic version of the Zippleback. The Hobblegrunt of Day 9 was a dragon introduced in How to Train Your Dragon 2, and it was one of the dragons found in Volka's sanctuary. Although we don't know much about this dragon, to my understanding, it does look really cool. Similar to the Deadly Natter in the way that it appears to be more raptor-like, the fin-like crest on its head and tail make me think that this dragon might be semi-aquatic, or at least have aquatic tendencies. Sort of like how the Spinosaurus was thought to have lived partially on land and partially in water. This was another one of those days where I felt like I got the scale pattern spot on. Although the spots on the Zippleback kind of screwed me up a little bit, I figured out a way better way to do the spots on this one, and I carried the strategy forward when doing the textures of the other dragons in the future. Day 10 Raincutter was another dragon that appeared in Volka's sanctuary. And interestingly, it appears like it was actually designed for the first film, but went through a good many redesigns for its appearance in the second film. If you look up Raincutter online, you can easily find some of this concept art, and it looks more like the Snifflehunch, another dragon that appears in this movie. But interestingly, I didn't know this when I did my dragons for my own dragon manual, and so the Raincutter design that I used was actually the concept art that I believe was meant for the first movie. Posing my updated version like its concept art, but using the features of the official dragon, I quickly drew a pose that I was super happy with. Although I didn't give this dragon much thought when making the list, this is another one of my favorites. It too looks like it may have some sort of semi-aquatic nature in the way its dorsal spines and head crest are. Day 11 was the Skrill, which is a relatively mysterious dragon in the lore of How to Train Your Dragon. It supposedly flies through storm clouds to cloak its movements and build up static electricity that it shoots out of its mouth in place of fire breath. I have a memory of watching the How to Train Your Dragon TV show about a year before the second movie came out, and I think there was this episode featuring the Skrill where it was shown to be able to, turn invisible when it was struck by lightning or something like that. It's been so long I don't really remember the specifics, but I always thought that idea was a little silly. And I found it a lot more intimidating when it was just hiding in these storm clouds, waiting to attack. I took inspiration from bat wings for the Skrill, as it most resembles bats when compared to the other dragons. Though I am a fan of the way I posed it in my anatomical editions, I wish I could have illustrated its electrical abilities a little bit better. Maybe I should have left its mouth open and had some sort of dynamic blue glow emitting from within, because I think my version looks a little flat, if not boring, because the original's just blackish purple. With all that said, though, I'm still really happy with how it turned out. Day 12, Rumblehorn, is another one of the more visually unique dragons from the series. First appearing in the second How to Train Your Dragon movie as the steed of Chief Stoic, it is heavily armored with these natural reflective green and red plates that cover the front half of its body. The Rumblehorn looks like a fascinating combination between a dragon, a rhinoceros, and a rhinoceros beetle. And as such, I used both of those animals in my references for this design. The unique bright green coloration of the rhinoceros beetle that I chose as reference made a super cool texture for this dragon, especially in the way that it's like pearlescent surface looks. Shading it was quite tricky, actually. I ended up treating the texture as if it was metal, which helped me shade it in a way that highlighted what the texture was. The other interesting aspect was, in certain portions of the armor, it changed hue to a more red color depending on how the light hit it, and so I had to place strategic splashes of rust red to get the feel that I wanted. A similar palette was used for the body, but I kept it less vibrant than its reflective armor to show the difference between the two textures. And so here's Day 12, Rumblehorn. And that is all of the dragons for week 2 of Smaugust. We're a little less than halfway through. Over on the Discord, we have a few people participating in the Smaugust chat, including Carno13, who is going off their own list, and some of their art is being featured on the screen right now. I encourage anyone else who wants to participate to go share their art over there. Not only would I love to see it, but your art might make it into the end section of any of the next 3 weeks of Smaugust. So, good luck to the rest of you all who are going through with this challenge, and I will see you next Thursday for week 3. Until then, if you enjoyed this video, then leave a like. And if you want to see more like it, then hit subscribe and turn on the bell to get notified when I upload next.